How can one melodic kernel give birth to an entire hymn? That's what we're going to look at today for your Composer Gem in Dr. Doug's Daily Tips for how to write great LDS church music. We're looking at LDS Hymn number 113, Our Savior's Love, which is a great example of taking one little musical idea, one melodic kernel, and from it birthing an entire melody and therefore an entire hymn. Okay, let's dive in. There's so many things we could talk about in this hymn. Could seriously give you, 10, 20, probably 30 composer gems from this one hymn. There's so many wonderful techniques. But I want you to really notice this one because sometimes the biggest challenge we face is creating a good melody. And this is one way, kind of like what we looked at yesterday, to use a small amount of material to then create a much longer melody. Okay, so Our Savior's Love, I know you know it. Look at the opening little melodic kernel. I've bracketed here in red. So we're in D major. We start on the third scale degree, F sharp, and we go up a third, down a third, up a fourth. Okay, that little figure gives birth to the whole rest of the hymn. The most obvious spot to look is the start of each line. Okay, you can see directly beneath it that the same motive occurs, but now a third higher. On As From Above, in the second line there, see where I have the second bracket? We're on the A, we leap up a third, just like we leapt up a third in the first line. See, we leapt up a third, down a third, up a fourth. Now, same thing, up a third to C sharp, back down to A third, and then up a fourth. Now, if this second iteration had happened directly after the first one, we would call it a sequence, and it would sound like this. Not bad writing at all. In fact, it's a very good technique. Instead, and it's not that one is better than the other, but just a different way of using a little melodic kernel like that is to present it and then to let it kind of spin itself out, which happens here. So we get the Our Savior's love shines like the sun with perfect light. It kind of spills out of the B and finishes on the note that it started on. We start and end on the same F sharp. Okay. Then when the second one happens, same thing happens. We get the motive, the little kernel, and then it spills out again. And look, it ends on the same note that it began on. Okay. So it's just starting each phrase with the kernel and letting it spin out kind of on its own. And there are similarities between this spin out and this spin out, but it's nice to have some variation. So it does not necessarily have to be exact, which is fun. One thing that he does do is he takes this big leap here and he does it again, but on a different beat, and then he follows it with another leap. So that's kind of how he's evolving the tune, the spin out half of the tune. Okay, so we saw the first use of the kernel. Here's the second use of the kernel. Now, the third line, we get pretty much the same kernel. There's one difference. Since the register is getting higher and higher, we've gone up a third again. C sharp, E, C sharp. Now, E is pretty much the top of the register for a hymn. We don't want to go any higher than that. It's too high. So instead of going up a third, down a third, and then up a fourth like I did before, instead we go down another third. Okay? And having heard that little kernel twice in a row in exactly the same format, up a third, down a third, up a fourth, it's nice to have a little variation. So it's clearly the same motive, up a third, down a third, and then down another third for a slight change. And then the same note happens in repetition, just like up here, same note in repetition, same note in repetition, and it spins itself out again. This time it ends on F sharp instead of the starting note. Okay, so again, a bit of variation, right? And then the last line, we get the same motive one last time, up a third, down a third, and instead of going up a fourth, we now go down a fifth. And the note we get to is tonic, which then repeats itself again like it did every other time. And this time we end on tonic. And now look at this big leap of a sixth. That's kind of an outgrowth of this big leap and this big leap. Okay? And so we get the big leap of a sixth, and then we get that same exact leap that we had here and here one last time before ending on the final tonic. Okay, but every line, every single line starts with the exact same motivic kernel, 4 notes. This one, this one, this one, and this one. This is an excellent way to write a melody. It belongs to itself. Every couple of measures of music comes from a previous line. It's sort of a natural evolution, keeping the same identity. Okay, so in some musical circles, when we get a little more excited about this technique and it builds into like whole movements of symphonies, we call it motivic development. I suppose this is motivic development on a small scale. A famous example is Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, ba-da-ba-dum, ba-da-ba-dum, where, again, 4 notes create a musical kernel, but then the entire movement is based on those 4 notes. And in fact, the other movements of the symphony are also based on 3 short notes and a long note. In each movement, the motive makes its appearance. So that's like motivic development on full scale. Here we just have the start of each line building on the same motive or musical kernel. All right, that is your composer gem for today. If you enjoyed that, and if you'd like additional free composer gems, head over to latterdaymusiversity.com, where you can get a free copy of my 10 Commandments of How to Write Testimony-Building Warm, Fuzzy Music. And while you're here, go ahead and hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you'll get a notification every time I post a new video. They're coming out every single day. And we'll see you back here tomorrow for another Dr. Doug's tips for writing great church music. We'll look at hymn 114. See you then. Bye.